I'm one of three daughters, and being the eldest one has probably had an impact because that always means a little bit of responsibility. I went to a girls' school, and I think that was actually important because it made me see that the girls, of course, can do science, can of course do math, because who else would do it? The one topic that I learned there is how important it is to listen to people who that are not fluent in your language, because I'm always a little bit impatient. I tend to think that people are maybe not so sharp if they can't express themselves well, until I went to Paris and was like, oops, a fish who couldn't say anything, like, oops. I always were afraid that I couldn't end the sentence, so started, but wasn't sure whether I could end it.
Do you have advice for young students here how to maybe do well in their own careers?
It's always a little bit hard to say what have been the magic ingredients, yeah. But I think what helps is this strategic view, because I think that's really what many people look for in a leader. So do you have a perspective? Do you have an idea where the company should go to? So I think that's an important one. Then liking people helps a lot.
As a CEO of Brussels Airlines, can you just call them and say, look, I'm a bit late, can I check in later? Or
you wouldn't ever do that because you want to be a punctual airline.
Okay, all right.
And they wouldn't listen to me, I guess, but I wouldn't try it either.
And what does your job entail as CEO?
Yeah, I actually have three roles. So I've got the CEO role, I'm also the Chief Commercial Officer, and I have a role for the Lufthansa Group at the EU Commission, so a political role discussing, for example, the Refuel EU or some of the Green Deal packages.
Why should people choose Brussels Airlines to fly?
Our motto is really making people feel at home. So, and our slogan is in good company. So we want to make sure that if you fly with us, you really are taken care in a good way. And I think we actually do have lovely flight attendants. So I think the service is really outstanding.
Dear students, welcome to the CEO Leadership Series. My name is Cheng Wang Li, and it is an immense pleasure for me to present to you the CEO of Brussels Airlines. Brussels Airlines is the flag carrier and largest airline of Belgium. It is also one of the most reliable airlines in Europe and has received awards for its wine selection and for having the Europe's leading airline lounge 6 years in a row now. Ms. Dorothea von Boxberg has been CEO of Brussels Airlines since 2023. She is one of the most important and influential top managers of Belgium and of the European and global aviation industry. Ms. von Boxberg studied industrial engineering at the Technical University of Berlin and ESCP Paris. Upon graduation, she joined Boston Consulting Group as a consultant and became project leader of the company. Then she joined Star Alliance Services as Director Alliance Development, and then joined the Lufthansa Group and held different roles, including Head of Strategy and Investment and Head of Customer Experience. Then she joined Lufthansa Cargo as Vice President for Global Sales Management, later on became a board member of the company, and then its CEO and CFO, before, as I mentioned, becoming CEO of Brussels Airlines in 2023. It is an immense pleasure for me to welcome Ms. von Boxberg to our campus because she is highly successful, accomplished, and well-respected, not only within the aviation industry, but also outside. And she's, for example, a supervisory board member of Continental or Continental, whose CEO happened to come visit us 3 days ago, as I told you. And in addition, I'm also just a few miles and scores short for my next, miles and more status level. So I hope Ms. von Boxberg can use her connections and influence to help bump me up a little bit. Thus, please help me and very warmly welcome Ms. Dorothea von Boxberg.
I am impressed by everything that you memorized.
Thank you very much for coming to our event series. It's a great pleasure for us. How about we start from the beginning to get to know you a little bit? Can you maybe tell us a little bit about your childhood and school years?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Well, I'm one of three daughters, and being the eldest one has probably had an impact because that always means a little bit of responsibility. I went to a girls' school, And I think that was actually important because it made me see that the girls, of course, can do science, can of course do math, because who else would do it? And some of my peers have also studied physics and been very successful in the science one. So I think that was important. Yeah, and I think, yeah, and I've had parents that were always very much pro-education. That also wanted us, all three girls, to strive. And yeah, my mother was also working. I think that makes a difference. If you've got a role model there, she was also ambitious in her role. She was also a leader. So I think having a role model in the family is nice, and I was a big fan of my father. So that's of course not of my mother. How could you? Yeah. So, but being a big fan of your father and your father supporting you, I think that's also helpful.
All right. I think you mentioned physics. Was that one of your favorite subjects, or what were your favorite subjects? And can you maybe disclose, were you back then already a very hardworking student, or did it come later in life?
Okay. So actually, I think what's a little bit of a thread in my life is that I was always interested in many things. So it was not the one subject that was the one and only, but my Abitur majors were math and English, so
Okay.
also a combination of topics. Yeah.
All right. And how come you decided to study industrial engineering then?
Yeah, that continues with this thread of I didn't want to go just one way. Yeah? So doing only engineering or only business didn't seem right. I really was interested in many things, so I thought, let's do something where you can learn a bit of more things.
Okay. Looking back, did you enjoy your studies? I mean, we have the same alma mater, right, in Berlin. We studied the same thing almost. You had an electrical engineering focus.
Yes.
How did you like that program? And would you have done anything differently looking back now?
Well, I hugely enjoyed my studies, and I would be astonished if any one of you didn't know, because it's such an important time in life, and actually even independent of what you study, I guess. Yeah. Would I have done something else? Well, with hindsight, I would probably not have chosen electrical engineering. So in the end, that was not my favorite subject. But when I found out, I had progressed quite far in my studies, so I thought, well, let's do it and not start something else and redo it.
Okay. What about ESCP Paris? I mean, you went there, probably improve your language skills, cultural kind of experiences. Any highlights of your time over there?
Well, it was a little bit on the challenge side because French was my third language and I didn't speak it very well. I thought English I can do anyway, so let's not spend my time in an English-speaking country. So it was definitely for the language thing. And one topic that I learned there is how important it is to listen to people who that are not fluent in your language, because I'm always a little bit impatient. I tend to think that people are maybe not so sharp if they can't express themselves well. Until I went to Paris, it was like, oops, a fish who couldn't say anything, like, oops. I always were afraid that I couldn't end the sentence, so started, but wasn't sure whether I could end it. So I was like, for several months, like listening in, but not really able to say much. And I think that was a very important experience. But it was overall a lovely experience that I can only recommend.
All right. And then you graduated from both schools. So how come you chose BCG to work there as an employer?
Yeah, so that's again this topic of, do I want to make my choice already and only go in one direction? So I felt it was too early to already say which industry is it. I thought I can learn more if I go to different industries and have different kinds of projects. And that was actually also then happening. So I think I had a very steep learning curve, and it was a super cool way of learning concepts, project lead techniques, but also how to structure a work, how to build a concept, all these kinds of things.
Okay. And oftentimes people in strategy consulting firms, they start within that generalist track where you're immediately kind of working on airline aviation projects, or did you work on different industries? Can you maybe tell us a little bit?
Well, I actually didn't work on airlines much altogether because, well, there weren't so many projects around at the time, I guess. And you always work together with a few partners. I was actually with a partner who was doing different industries, so he kind of took me along. So I also saw high-tech, industrial engineering, but also construction. And so I really enjoyed being in different industries and doing different kinds of projects. It's also a little bit the hard way, because it's of course easier if you've done a similar project already and you do something where you know more about. So it's a bit harder to always get into something, and sometimes I didn't like it, obviously, yeah.
Okay.
But with hindsight, and I think also most of the time while I was there, I really enjoyed it.
All right. Now, as you mentioned, hindsight and looking back, I mean, you climbed up the ranks up to project leader. For those of our students that are interested in consulting, what advice would you have in terms of applying for consultancy and working in consultancy?
So, I mean, you definitely work a lot. So I think you need to like that enough to don't find the work-life balance tends to be more on the work side, so you need to really like your work a lot. I think that's also something that has continued in my life. How to apply there? I probably all how to apply there. Doing some case studies and these kinds of things, so that you for sure know. I think also in consultancies it can happen that you go directly in one industry and you stay there. So then, and I think as the projects are longer and the industry is more set, it's more similar to going into an industry itself. So for me, the big benefit was really to be able to have a glimpse into different industries. So if you could get that, I think that was my way how I liked it.
All right. By the way, which office were you located in, if you can disclose?
Yeah, it was in the Stuttgart office, and that was really nice because it's a small office. Everybody knows everybody. It was a very familiar, nice place with very nice people also.
Okay. And then many people use consultancies or other jobs as a springboard to enter different industries. So how did that happen? How did you enter Star Alliance Services?
So I actually did find my job through one of the postings that were at Boston Consulting Group, so that was helpful. And why did I want to change? It was actually two topics. So one topic was that I felt I had really worked for a long time on concepts and strategy and kind of PowerPoints. And I wanted to be also responsible for implementing it. Yeah. So this whole topic of you go in, you go out, and you don't even see whether it happens, and you don't even see whether it works, that at some point was less interesting to me. So I like the brain work and the analysis and what you get out, but I also want to make it happen. So that was the one. And the other one was that I had got my first child while I still was working with BCG. And then when the second was arriving, I was saying, okay, so you need to take your maternity leave to find another job, because with two children, it's maybe a little bit too much. Yeah.
All right. So you joined Star Alliance Services as
Yes.
Director for Alliance Development. What were you doing in that role?
Yeah, that was a role. So Star Alliance is the management company that organizes that alliance. So it's actually a very small entity. And at the time, it was really cool because it had expats from all the different airlines coming in, and the company was in Frankfurt. And so I really enjoyed working with people from very many nationalities. So, and I only realized then that it was really a big benefit. It was not a reason to choose them, but when I was there, I realized that it really meant a lot to me. And the topics were really about what other cool projects could the Alliance bring to life. And one of them was actually at the time already a cargo project, which was interesting later in my life. But I found out that in the Alliance, moving is slow, because it's a little bit like the United Nations. So it's unanimous votes. Everybody needs to agree to something. That takes a lot of time. Sometimes it doesn't happen at all because the airlines have different business models and different interests. And that's why I actually didn't stay so long, because I felt that you can't do as much as I would have liked to do.
Okay, maybe two quick follow-up questions on that. First of all, switching to an alliance member like Lufthansa Group, was it a very smooth sailing process, or was it a regular application process? And secondly, as former director of alliance development, do you have like lifetime access to, the Hunt Circle, all the lounges and so on, or?
No, as a member of Lufthansa, you don't have these perks. You're just a staff member, and you always have the least reliability to get the flight confirmed. You're always on the wait list and these kinds of things. So,
Really?
Hon Circle member, you need to really fly. There is no other way, and you need to fly as a real paying customer and not as an employee.
All right.
So, no way.
And that move to Lufthansa, so you basically applied for a position, or how did
Yes,
that
I
go?
did. So it was actually a regular application. I had met a few people already, and
Okay.
that's how it came about.
Can you maybe, so you had different roles at Lufthansa. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about some of the highlights or all of the things that you did?
Well, all of the things I don't want to bore you, but the first role I had was also again in the strategy role, which is of course an easy way to get into a company when you've started as a strategy consultant. And my first projects were actually consolidation projects. So which airlines would Lufthansa want to buy? And that was super interesting because it really helps you to understand what is important in the P&L of an airline, what is important on the balance sheet, how does it all come together. So it's a little bit like war gaming or doing a business case or so, but on a real subject. And I found that super interesting. You learn about how network structures should be, how corporate sales works. So I think that was also, again, a nice entry into the company. And then my second role was customer experience and this whole view on what makes the customer happy. And you can, of course, spend a lot of money on what makes the customer happy, but understanding what is most fundamental, where do you have the highest return of the buck for what is, in terms of customer satisfaction or recommendation, net promoter score. So yeah, seeing where can you make the difference, that I found super interesting.
Okay. What were some of the insights that you found out during that time? I mean, what are the main factors, success factors for customer satisfaction? And what gives you most bang for the buck, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, one topic that we more or less only found out the hard way the last years was if you're not punctual, that really has a big impact on customer satisfaction. In the old days, it was kind of always punctual, so it didn't seem to be such a big factor. But of course, the basic is a reliable, punctual service. And then it depends a little bit on how long you fly. So if you fly more on the short haul, then of course the overall ground experience is also important. The longer you fly, it's more the onboard experience. So how's the cabin? How are the flight attendants? Is there a good service? Is it hospitable? So these kinds of questions. Okay. And then of course, are you leisure traveler? Are you a business traveler? So it also depends a bit on the state of mind you're in.
Okay. Who are the airline's most favorite customers? Is it business? Is it premium economy? Who gives airlines the most money?
So that is actually a question of money per square meter, more or less. Yeah. So and because in the end you only have a certain surface in the airline in the aircraft, and so the most revenue per square meter we actually get in premium economy class.
Okay, premium. All right.
Yeah.
And what about if I want to increase my, miles and more or other types of status miles? What's the best strategy for that? Is it just flying a lot? Is it flying business? Is it using the credit cards and so on, or what is it?
Well, the credit card earns you points to redeem for flights, but it doesn't get you the status. Okay. So it depends a little bit on what you are aiming at, yeah? So is it more your holiday travel or is it more the status? The status has, of course, its benefits with lounge access and fast lanes and so on, so it really makes the travel more comfortable, even if then on that day you fly economy class. So I think it depends a bit on what you're looking for.
Okay. What about you yourself, if I may ask? Do you have, some people, they always have a favorite seat, aisle or window or A1. Do you have that as well, or don't you care?
I'm one of those window seaters. I love looking down. And actually, one of the favorite perks in my job right now is that oftentimes pilots let me join them in the cockpit. And so that I really love. So you've got this beautiful view. You see like the earth from above. So that's something I really like.
All right. And, I missed 1 or 2 flights in my life. What about as a CEO of Brussels Airlines? Can you just call them and say, look, I'm a bit late. Can I check in later? Or
you wouldn't ever do that because you want to be a punctual airline.
Okay. All right.
So, and they wouldn't listen to me, I guess, but I wouldn't try it either. So.
All right. So then you switched to Lufthansa Cargo at some point. How did that change come about? And what was your role there?
Yeah. So Lufthansa Cargo is in the Lufthansa Group the one company doing the freight services, and they have freighters, but also within each of the long-range aircraft, there's like the belly space where you have the luggage, but also some containers of freight. And so Lufthansa Cargo is not only selling their own freighters, but also Lufthansa's, Austrians, Eurowings, Brussels Airlines bellies. And it's a different business model. It's really B2B. So you've got shippers of the world using forwarders to send their freight. And air freight is a lot more expensive than sea freight. So you would only use it if it's urgent, time critical, if you've got this a temperature sensitivity, so that you need to absolutely make sure that that the temperature range never changes, and that's why you would choose the much shorter time it's used, and so on. So it's a special business, and it's quite different from the passenger airline side to a certain extent. On the other side, I mean, you also need network. You also have this perishable good. So once the flight has departed and the space is empty, well, it's a waste and you haven't sold it. So some things are very much the same, but on the customer side, it's quite different. And I started on that commercial side, sales steering, pricing, and then later chief commercial officer. So that's, where different to the passenger airlines. Sometimes you have customer calling you and shouting at you if something doesn't work. You hear a lot of interesting stories around how the world trade really works. So what is needed, where and why? So for example, right now, German automotive industry ships like crazy into the US because they're really afraid of the tariffs coming by the incoming President Trump. Yeah, so it's so interesting to see what is really happening in world trade. And I was there during the pandemic times, so that was obviously the super interesting time when the passenger aircraft were more or less on ground, freighters were flying nonstop, and it was, of course, operationally a little bit complicated to get it done, to make sure that nobody gets infected, to make sure that all the rules and regulation are taken care of. So that was a nice challenge, but it was also very cool years because we were also having the most profitable years ever of the Lufthansa Cargo. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. And then you were called upon to join the management board of Lufthansa Cargo, right? I think that was your first kind of board experience, Vorstands experience. Do you still remember the phone call, what they told you? Was it a meeting in the office? What your emotional state was like on that day?
Yeah, so I had this invitation to one of the board members, and it was already clear that it would be about a position. So I had kind of made up my mind of what would be the best case and what would be the worst case that could come out of that meeting. And that was actually my best case. So I absolutely were delighted with that position. So that was actually, I was really happy. And he was a little bit astonished that I was saying, yes, sure, I take it, because he had expected me to think about it, but I had thought about it before. So I knew that I wanted that one.
All right. And what was your job in that board? What did you do?
Well, it was the function of the chief commercial officer. So sales, network, revenue management, pricing, so all the commercial functions.
Okay, so some of the things you already mentioned. And what about your call to become CFO and CEO of the company? Do you remember that situation? Did you expect that as well? Did you say, all right, sure, I'm going to do it?
No, I didn't expect it at that moment because I didn't expect the CEO to leave. So that was quite a surprise that he was leaving at the time. And then that was not official yet when I was asked. So no, that I was a little bit less prepared, but that was also a role that I really liked to take. I really liked my time at Lufthansa Cargo, and that was a very nice development also.
Okay, was it a big change in terms of the tasks that you were performing from a board member, quote unquote, regular board member to CEO?
It's really interesting because when you're a board member, of course you think you're important, haha, and of course you think that nothing much would change if you become the CEO, no? So it's more or less the same job. So if you look from the side as one of the board members to your CEO, you think, aha, is that person really doing more than you? No, not really. And then once you become the CEO, you see that everybody focuses on you. So if you look at the press, if you look at the staff, so it's really amazing how much more you are suddenly in the spotlight. So kind of the lights are always on. So this question of, did she go to the canteen and did she look strange and is something ongoing? Yeah. So, or she was really happy today. What's happening? Yeah. So, or how generally is she behaving? I mean, people really look at you and draw their conclusions. So that is really different. Yeah. And then it's probably also different in terms of, well, whether the responsibility is really so different, I don't know. It's probably more this, you're more on stage, you're more in the spotlight, and people tend to interpret every move you do into something.
What's the best practice to deal with that? I mean, just keeping a poker face or just avoiding large crowds, or what do you do then?
I think my approach is to meet many people so that they kind of hopefully know a bit who I am and how I am, so that they don't guess so much, but have more of their of an opinion. Yeah. So, of course, town halls, but also going to the canteen and talking with different people, so that it's more normal that you're around, and then you're maybe getting a little less watched at, or looked at.
All right. Now, Ms. von Boxberg, you climbed up the career ladder in different organizations. Looks like smooth sailing, very, very quickly up. Do you have a few questions? Do you have advice for our, young students here how to maybe do well in their own careers, in their own pursuit? And well, let's start with this one. Yeah.
Well, so it's always a little bit hard to say what have been the magic ingredients, yeah. But I think what helps is this strategic view, because I think that's really what many people look for in a leader. So, do you have a perspective? Do you have an idea where the company should go to? So I think that's an important one. Then liking people helps a lot. Because I mean, as a leader, I spend a lot more time in meetings, in town halls, in communication than people working on something. And that means if you don't like that, it's not so fun. And you need people to follow you. So leading means also somebody following, and that only works if you've got a good interaction with people, I think. So that's also important. And then I think one topic that also helps is having seen different roles, having had different perspectives, and learning from that. And I think that's actually especially a recommendation for the ladies in the room, because I think it's still true that in terms of potential, women are looked at by what they have already proven, whereas men are more judged versus what might be their potential. And so as a woman, still, I think it's important to have proven a number of things before people also, as recruiters, as hiring managers, think you have the potential to go up.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you for the advice. And in terms of leadership, you mentioned having strategic kind of thinking styles and so on. Was that a big change in terms of starting as in your case, a consultant doing your own work, and then all of a sudden having teams around you and bigger teams, bigger responsibilities? How would you describe that change in your leadership style?
Yeah, so I guess I did it like many people do when they start with leadership. They think, what's so difficult about leadership, huh? So you just do it. And then you find out, maybe not everybody is immediately happy with your leadership style, yeah? So it helps to get feedback. What we have in the Lufthansa Group is a yearly, also anonymous staff survey. So every colleague can ask like a whole set of questions and also put comments. And that's of course helpful because some people don't tell you in the eye what they think, but they would probably write it. So we also have this 360-degree feedback or different tools to make sure that you really get good feedback. I think that is what I would recommend anybody who's started leading, maybe not in month 2, because you need to still do it, but after half a year or after a year, make sure that you get feedback on how you're doing. Because sometimes there are surprises and sometimes people think they're doing all fine, and maybe their team also says all is fine, but it's maybe not fine. And so this understanding that everybody wants appreciation, everybody wants to be a real person contributing to the whole and not just be somebody working on something. Well, I don't know whether I always knew that. I should have probably always known that, but I think that's definitely become more important for me over time.
Okay, all right. What about main challenges that you face until you received your first CEO role at Lufthansa Cargo? I mean, looking at your CV, it seems smooth sailing, but oftentimes there are some challenges that perhaps also helped you as lessons learned. Were there many, or was it truly just smooth sailing?
I think there are always lots of challenges, and less in terms of getting to the next position, because that was never so planned in my case, and it was never that I strategically was looking at this will be my position. So not in that sense, but just in any job, I think there's always times where you think, why am I doing this? Why is it all horrible? And why doesn't it go much smoother? So this topic, you've prepared a big decision and you don't get the approval in the end. So you've worked for nothing. So for example, my very first topic of buying the airlines, none of the airlines I've worked on were ever acquired. I mean, how great is that when you spend a lot of work and hard sympathy for the topic, and then it doesn't happen. Yeah, but also in my cargo times, I had a big project that in the end didn't work out, and we had to stop the project and really waste the money and start from scratch again. So, I mean, that's really disappointing. That's not what you want. Yeah. So, I think there have been a lot of challenges, but yeah, I think the big topic is: can you learn something from the challenge? Is there something that you can take away?
And what are some of the takeaways? For example, very specifically, you work very hard over a few months, put on all the analysis, energy with your team perhaps. You make a good case that you think is a good case. The board should definitely prove it to buy. And they said, no, we don't want it. So how do you learn from that?
That one is a tough one because actually, so could you have brought the case forward in a better way? Is it more could it have been more compelling to them or not? Yeah, but I think there I didn't learn so much from the project more. So this question of we had a big lessons learned workshop trying to figure out why did it go wrong. And we had a big discussion on the project team saying, but we said it was going wrong and you didn't listen. And we saying, but you didn't say anything was wrong. So this sender-receiver topic. So do I listen well enough when people tell me that something may not go right? Am I willing to accept also that something is not going right? On the other hand side, do I know that not everybody dares to fully speak up if something doesn't work well? So this whole topic of how to hear like the smaller signals and how to make sure that you don't just brush them away and then have some not so nice surprises later, I think there was a real learning.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about your CEO role at Brussels Airlines. So, I guess the French language experience in Paris fully paid off now, right?
Actually, our company language is English.
All right.
No.
So, do you remember what your first days, first weeks, first months were in that job? And how is that role different from your CEO role at Lufthansa Cargo?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's different functionally, of course. It's back to passenger airlines. It's abroad, so it's my first job not in Germany. So that, of course, also makes a difference. And the first days, so it was a very welcoming atmosphere. So the Belgians generally, but also especially the people at Brussels Airlines are really cool. So it's very nice to work with them and you feel very welcomed. But it still feels a lot better 1.5 years later because I mean, I know better how it works. I know the people. I know the processes. I know where to look and what will work anyways. So this feeling good at the beginning, but realizing later that actually you probably didn't feel quite so good because you feel so much better later when you have more confidence of when you know the topics better and so on. I think that is definitely something.
And what does your job entail as CEO? I mean, is it mainly analytic? I mean, we can assume some of it, but it would be great if you can tell us. Is it analytical work? Is it a lot of meetings? Is it relationship building? Is it traveling a lot? What are the building blocks?
Yeah, I actually have 3 roles. So I've got the CEO role. I'm also the Chief Commercial Officer. And I have a role for the Lufthansa Group at the EU Commission, so a political role discussing, for example, the Refuel EU or some of the Green Deal packages. So that means, first of all, you need to really look that the agenda takes care of the most important topics, because it's very easy to fill your calendar up to the hilt and you still haven't done the things that you really want to do. So managing calendar, I think, is important. Okay. And it's a lot of meetings, no doubt. Yeah. So most of my time is meeting other people. So yes, of course, I'm sometimes reading documents and making my thoughts, preparing for a meeting, for example. But that I really write a paper or do an Excel spreadsheet, no, not really. Wow. Yeah, so not much anymore. Doesn't mean that you don't need an analytical thinking, because people will, of course, bring their analyses forward, their argumentation, why something should be, and the question is, do I follow or don't I follow, and what are my arguments? Yeah, so being a good sparrings partner will require that you keep your analytical mind for sure, but I don't do the analysis more. I poke the holes into other people's analyses more. And yeah, so a day has a lot to do with meeting people, be it for functional topics, so really a commercial analysis or so, but then a lot of course, also for communication. So how do we go forward? Does the broader community understand where we want to go? And then on the strategy side, it's really this topic of how can we make sure that we don't just think about things, but do them? So this bias for action, how do we get there? And one means that I really like in that direction is to work with objectives and key results. So having company objectives, more or less 3 for a year, and then have the key results below that are measurable and very clear. People understand what are we measuring to see whether we are successful or not. I think that really helps to align the noses in one direction and to also help people to focus and to prioritize. So I think that's also an important role because there's always so many things that you could do. And I guess to whatever company you go, people will tell you that they have a huge workload and a lot to do. And the question is, yeah, but how can we make sure that the workload goes down a bit and you focus on the things that are really most relevant? And how do we agree jointly on what is most relevant?
Okay. A quick follow-up. You mentioned your own calendar managing it because we have various different experiences. Some people, they let their team, their CEO team and assistants handle it. Of course, you have your assistants probably handle part of it, but how much are you involved in determining your own schedules? That's number one. And then the second one is, can you maybe tell us a little bit about a typical, quote unquote, typical day in the life of a CEO? When does it start? A bit personal, perhaps. When do you wake up even? When does it start? What do you do? How long does the day last? Do you work on weekends and so on and so forth?
Yeah, okay. So my calendar is more or less in the hands of my assistant, but we have more or less a daily discussion on what goes in, what goes out. So I have my emails like I would like to meet person XYZ on topic XYZ. So that I do, of course, quite a bit. And then also see what do I not do. I think that's the more important one because it's so easy to have too much. So how's my day? So I'm not a particular early bird, but due to school kids, yeah. So I usually get up at 6:30. Yeah, so that would be the time of the day. Then I do my sports more in the morning. So I'm not really doing it after work. So on my sport days, that would be a thing to do.
May I ask what sport you do?
It's really basic stuff. So jogging, workouts. Yeah. So. Right. Nothing very spectacular, but steady. I think that helps. And then, breakfast, workout, not every day, and then go to work. That would usually be it. And then I would probably have meetings, usually between 9 and 6. Doesn't mean that I have all the time meetings, but quite a big portion of meetings in that time. And then in the evenings, I have quite a few evening events. So, I mean, also in that more political role, there's a lot of things happening in Brussels where you just go and meet people, but also with the airport or within the Lufthansa Group, kinds of team events or so. So I think that's also something to make sure that I don't have too many of these evening events because that can go against your sleep, which is not so good. And then right now I'm working in Brussels. My family is still back in Frankfurt, so I'm more doing the work in the week and not on the weekend to make sure that when I'm at home, I'm really there for them.
Oh, okay. Sounds very good. Let's talk about Brussels Airlines. What does the future hold for your airline?
Yeah, Brussels Airlines, you said it, is the former national carrier of Belgium. It was Sabena once upon a time, and now for the last 22 years, it's Brussels Airlines. And Brussels Airlines has like a little bit of a rough future. So it was really lots of up and downs and not a very profitable airline. So, and that is also why the airline is not very big right now. So when you're tending to be unprofitable, you also don't have the means to invest and you can't grow. And also turnaround programs also tend to shrink all the unprofitable things away. So unprofitable routes, for example, and then you become smaller. So we're starting from only 40 aircraft right now, or 42. And I think the first task is really to have a sustainable turnaround. So not all this up and down, but making sure that we steadily get more profitable. So that's, I think, super important. On the growth path, we have a good network in Africa. So we fly to 18 destinations in sub-Saharan Africa. And many of those, I think you wouldn't know. So you probably haven't been in Ouagadougou or in Cameroon or in Abidjan or in Rwanda or in Kenya or so. And that's a lot of places that I really like to discover and where we have, I think, also big plans for our future. So we want to grow that network more. Also in the Lufthansa Group, we're the only ones that are so specialized on Africa. And we also work together with our joint venture partners with United Airlines and Air Canada that will bring us more and more feet across the transatlantic. And then we fly the passengers onwards into the different African countries. So that is our growth plan. And that's also challenging, like always, because building a hub, but not all internally, but some with your partners, requires quite a bit of coordination. And I think we can do that, and we will do that. But it's an ambitious growth plan. Oh. And then you have all these topics, like, for example, seasonality. So a lot more demand for air traffic in summer. Everybody wants to go on holidays. In winter, a lot less so. So how can you make sure that these kinds of fluctuations work out? I think that's one of the bigger topics we have right now. And then, of course, make sure that the overall company has more confidence, because this never ending up and down leads to people not being so sure about the future of the company, not being so sure about whether their workplace is really there. So making sure that we are an attractive employer, that we keep the good talent we have and attract more and offer good conditions. I think that's another one.
All right. Let's perhaps talk about growth and profitability. So what are some of the handles or levers that you can pull regarding that? Of course, we know kind of the basic calculation is you increase revenue, drive down costs if possible, right?
Yeah.
So how do you perhaps drive up revenue? And also I read you will increase your summer kind of output by 18% next year compared to this year. And this year was already very high, so congratulations. It's a good outlook. But what can you do, right?
Yeah. So in an airline, I was already mentioning that briefly, you have this problem with the perishability. Yeah, so it's a little bit like hotel beds. If for the night the bed wasn't taken, well, you can't get revenue for it anymore. Same as for any seat you're flying. Once you start the aircraft, it needs to be full. Otherwise, it's wasted. So I think the commercial functions in an airline, so revenue management, pricing, network management, make sure that you've got the right schedule, the right connectivity between feeder flights and long-haul flights. So all of that commercial function is super important. And then, of course, still sales to make sure that the distribution is also really well done. So that are the things you can look at if you want to be commercially successful and want to add to your revenues. It's of course also a lot to do with how do you place your offer to your customers. So do you try to have everything in one bundle and sell that bundle, or are you selling something smaller and then offer things on top like advanced seat reservation or extra luggage? So this topic of, do people want to spend their money in one go or rather a bit now and a bit later? So these kinds of questions are the ones I would say that drive revenue. Oh. And then the seasonality question. So how can you make sure that costs are not so high in the times where the demand is also not so high?
Okay. What about ancillary products? You know, as you mentioned, some extra reservations and so on. What are your favorite ones? What are the most profitable ancillary products that airlines have?
Well, the big three, we call it, is really advanced seat reservation, extra bags, and then people upgrading from one class to another one. That are the big ones. Oh. Yeah.
All right. And what about looking for new destinations? So you'll have Madeira next year, right? And you'll have greater frequencies for other destinations as well. What's the process in terms of determining which new destinations you would like and perhaps old destinations that you would need to unfortunately kind of let go for a while? Mm-hmm.
So what you need to let go is rather easy because you have the real route profitability and you see which routes haven't worked out. And then you can still think, do I need a larger or smaller aircraft? Is the timing of the day not good? But if you can't change much there, then you know it probably doesn't work. Yeah? Starting new routes is more difficult one, but we have a lot of data on where do passengers travel, which volumes are already there. We also have indications on the price levels people fly at. So actually we have, it's an industry with good data sources. And then, of course, there's also a little bit of a leap of faith. So for example, our Ouagadougou one, flying to Burkina Faso, we've been lucky because Air France went out. We're the only European carrier left. Okay, that helps, of course. So a little bit of luck sometimes helps.
All right. And what about the competitive landscape? I mean, you can try and differentiate yourself, and you do, to other airlines, but at the same time, there's code sharing and so on. So your services probably cannot be completely different for those type of flights, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very competitive industry, no doubt. So on the short haul flights, you've got a lot of low cost competition. And on the long haul, you've got a lot of competition from airlines like Turkish or the Gulf carriers that have very different, political support, also financial support when offering the same services. So I think it's definitely a very competitive industry. And then it gets back in the end to what are customers really interested in? So I think the whole network topic is, of course, a big one. So is the flight to where I want to go at the time I would like to take? That's, of course, important. Price is very important. And then the question is, in our case, we say we want people to feel at home. Yeah. So is it a good hospitality? Is it a good service people like to take? And can people rely on us because their luggage won't be lost, their connection will be possible, and these kinds of things?
Okay. Right. Let's talk about a different topic, perhaps sustainability. And I'm sure there will be questions on that topic as well as the topics we talked about. The airline, the aviation industry is not too big in terms of CO2 emissions, but if things do not change, it'll become kind of a bit big in terms of relative terms. So what do you do? What does Brussels Airlines do? And perhaps the aviation industry to try and kind of manage CO2 emissions and other sort of.
Yeah. So the problem in the aviation industry is that there is no alternative way to fly aircraft but with kerosene and with engines. Yeah, so there is no electrical vehicle, at least not for more than 500 kilometers and more than 100 people. Yeah, so if you want to fly long haul, you won't do it with batteries, and there's nothing available for new technology yet. Airbus, for example, is promising you the hydrogen aircraft as from 2035. I would love to have it, but I think it's still a long way, and let's see whether it's really available in 2035. Yeah. So what is it that we can do now? And I think one topic is, of course, buy aircraft with the newest engines, because the engine manufacturers still do a very good job in reducing the CO2 emission or the need for fuel, and there is the emission of CO2 from generation to generation. It's still minus 15% maybe on average from an older generation to a new one. So that's a super big factor. Then, of course, you can use fuels that take the CO2 out of the air before you burn them again. So that could be by biogene sources, so something green taking the CO2 out of the air. It can also be with chemical processes, so really taking the CO2 out of the air and putting it back into the fuel. So these processes work, but they're very expensive. And overall, fuel makes about 30% of the cost of an airline. So it's a huge chunk of your cost. And if you suddenly double that, it's not viable. So you need to find somebody to pay for it. And if you're the only one in the airline industry who does it, well, you'll probably go bankrupt. So it's a very fine balance of going the next step and doing more without ruining your P&L and then in the end going out of business. So that makes it a bit hard. The EU has now put in some rules. So they already have the emission trading scheme, which is relevant for all intra-European flights. But there are also the SAF mandate. SAF is Sustainable Aviation Fuels mandate starting next year with 2% and then 6 and then 10 and so on over the years. And I think that is generally a good scheme because it's very hard as an individual airline to go the next step. So I think you need a way to do it all of the airlines, but it can still be very difficult if it's the European airlines only and your competitors around not doing it, because then it really puts the European aviation industry at risk. And balancing that out is not so easy.
All right. But you do have very ambitious plans as Brussels Airlines. I mean, by 2030, you would like to have half as much emissions compared to 2019. Yes. And by 2050, you would like to have a zero CO2 kind of neutral flight, right? So are those basically the levers that you would like to pull to achieve that?
Yeah, the main levers are new aircraft, this sustainable aviation fuels, and then of course you can also still do things operationally. So for example, the way how you approach an airport, is it like in a constant descent or in a way that takes more fuel? Do your pilots take only one engine at the airports? Don't you take too much extra fuel, because the extra fuel is weight that leads to more fuel burn during the flight? So all kinds of operational measures as well. And I think there we really do a ton of things. Yeah.
And one specific kind of initiative that I saw is the Stargate project at Brussels Airport. Can you maybe tell, which is a sustainability initiative of sorts, can you maybe tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, so the idea there is to also have a SAF facility in the airport, and also over time to get to more intermodality, so to have more trains also coming into the airport, and to have some flights replaced by trains.
Okay.
So yeah.
And a few other initiatives, right? Like use cooking oil and so on, I saw, or ride sharing or things of that nature. So it's a kind of agglomeration of things that help airlines become more sustainable.
So the used cooking oils are one of the ingredients, or one of the possible ingredients for sustainable aviation fuels. And it's the one that we all like the most. Yeah, kind of fry to fly or something. Yeah, eat more French fries and then you can fly with a better conscience. But obviously that is not enough. Yeah, so you need other sources as well. But the fried cooking oils are of course a favorite ingredient.
And you mentioned different technological solutions that are not as feasible yet. What are your predictions? I mean, electric flying, hydrogen, also perhaps different outer shells or shark skin technologies and so on. Is the drag really that big on airplanes that it's useful?
So the drag is a topic. So this Aero Shark is one of the innovations actually of Lufthansa Technik. Yeah, to have a little film outside of the hull of an aircraft that reduces the drag. And so it again helps to get -1% of fuel burn. So yes, it helps, but it doesn't change the game entirely. So I think a very useful investment, a very good way to reduce some fuel, but it doesn't bring it to zero. For the hydrogen aircraft, so I think also not so easy, because in the end, the energy density of hydrogen is 1/4 of the one of fuel. So you need a lot more space for the energy source in the aircraft, and then where do you still have the space for the passengers? Yeah, so I think it's really not so easy to find good solutions, but the good thing is there are people really working on that, and they're quite sure they will get there, so looking forward to it.
All right, sounds good. Let's switch gears again. What about digital technology? So many of our students here are interested in, all the computer science aspects, data science. Of course, artificial intelligence is a big topic at the moment and probably will be for a long time. What type of implications do these technologies have for your company?
Yeah, so digital is of course very important. So this whole question of how can you interact with your customer, how can you make the journey as seamless as possible by knowing already what the next step is, what your customer will want, how to help your passenger out and so on. That's a big topic. And in the Lufthansa Group, we have the so-called digital hangar. That's about 1,000 people working on the app and on the desktop and on the mobiles, yeah, to make sure that in the end, if there should be an irregularity, you already get proposed solutions to check in, to rebook, to know whatever you could do at a certain step in the journey. So there's a lot happening there. And there are also some quite nice AI cases. So for example, the chatbot helping you to find the new solutions if something went wrong, I think is really getting traction, improving. I mean, of course, you can find cases that don't work out and where you think, oh, what a dumb chatbot. But there's many, many cases where it already works, and lots of more use cases in there. Also, this question of language translation is a big one. So how can you make sure that your website is really available in many different languages without people translating all the time? So AI is definitely a helper also in that sense. So I think, yeah, a lot is moving, a lot is happening. And I think we also do some things well. So the Lufthansa Group app has also won a prize at the World Aviation Festival this year. So I think we do have that idea, and we definitely invest in it.
Okay, looks like a good future.
Yeah.
Many future opportunities. There aren't many companies that are so international as yours or aviation industry, in general. What about different international kind of preferences? You know, you fly to different places where there are different food preferences, different cultures, different ways to greet each other, and so on and so forth. How do you deal with those differences, which can be very exciting, of course, but also sometimes adaptations need to be made, right?
Yeah, I think what is really important is that especially the people in your company that interact with your customers are aware. So we have at Brussels Airlines, we have interculturality trainings to make sure that people are aware of where the difference may be and what may be considered polite or impolite, to make sure that they don't, address people in the wrong way or so. So I think that's a very important one. The one with the meal choices, at Lufthansa, there is all kinds of ideas for Chinese meals, Japanese meals, Indian meals. So if you fly on those routes, you also have the local choices. At Brussels Airlines, we don't have that so much. We're quite convinced of the Belgian cuisine, actually. So that may help. But yeah, so I think you try to find ways to be sure that your customers feel well at board and feel at ease. What I really like at Brussels Airlines is that every ground staff person and every flight attendant speaks Flemish, Dutch, French, and English. So, and many of them speak still another language. So many people will be greeted in their language on board. And I think that's a very cool way to welcome people.
All right, sounds good. Let's maybe talk a little bit even more about Brussels Airlines from a, almost like a marketing perspective. Why should people choose Brussels Airlines to fly? And why should people consider Brussels Airlines as an attractive employer?
So our motto is really making people feel at home. So and our slogan is in good company. So we want to make sure that if you fly with us, you really are taken care in a good way. And I think we actually do have lovely flight attendants. So I think the service is really outstanding and really a very good element. But you mentioned it also, we are one of the most reliable airlines in Europe. The hub in Brussels is a small one, so the walkways you have from one flight to another are short. So I think there's many reasons. And of course, if you want to fly to Africa, for many of the destinations, there aren't very many carriers flying. So we're, of course, a good choice. Of course, we are a better choice for people living in Brussels than for people living somewhere else, because obviously all the direct connections that are kind of the favorite connections of people are, in our case, from Brussels, which can be an important thing. In terms of employer of choice, I think it has a lot to do of how we interact with each other in the company. So this question of, are you just a number in a big system, or are you somebody who is heard, who can make a difference, and who can change something? And I think there's still a lot of people who would say Brussels Airlines is a bit like family. I find family maybe a bit too much, yeah. So I'm happy to be a team or something, yeah. But it definitely is about liking to work with the other ones. So I think that is super important. And then being able to make a difference. And that's maybe also the advantage of a smaller company, that I think each and everyone can really see that they can make a difference.
Okay. So, by the way, when you mention family and I'm thinking about relationships, do airlines very much like long distance relationships? Because that means more business for you, right? Is it? You might even encourage it by placing people that you think would be good matches, right? And then
next to each other on the flight. Yeah. Actually, I have a colleague who has met her husband on a flight to India and is ever since married to the guy in India. So, but that is probably only something that airliners would do, yeah? So.
All right, got it. So let's perhaps follow up with a few quick fire questions. A few quick questions. Some are a bit on the private side. What type of music do you like to listen to?
I'm more on the classical music side, so.
All right. Any composer in particular?
Yeah, many actually. Okay. Could be Tchaikovsky, could be Schubert, could be Bach. So, yeah.
What type of food do you like?
Also, again, many foods, but maybe Italian as a favorite.
Okay. Any favorite dish, if you could choose one?
It would be sweet ones. It would be something like mousse au chocolat or something.
Okay. In your particular case, what's your favorite travel destination? Do you have one?
That I really don't have because I love to go to different places. So that's one of the things, going to different countries and discovering something new is something that I really like.
Okay. What type of vacation type do you like? Is it more adventure, beach, cold, warm weather, sports? Is there anything?
So it's more not just a week on the beach, but it's more going to different places, driving around, seeing something.
Okay, all right. If you were stranded on an island and you could not call your pilots to pick you up, what would be one thing that you cannot live without?
A good book would help, a chocolate would help, so
All right.
things like that, I guess.
All right. Speaking of books, what type of literature do you read, and do you maybe even have a book recommendation for us?
So I have a book recommendation by Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit. I think that's a very cool book in terms of understanding what drives the way we do things and how we can change it if we want to change it. A very nice one. Another one is Rutger Bregman, Humankind. Also a very cool book that goes very much into my vision of the world. It's basically about that humans are generally good people trying to help other peoples, and then there are lots of examples why that doesn't happen in wars or so. But generally, the first reaction is to be sociable and friendly. Also, a very cool book.
All right, thank you for the recommendations. Please allow me one last question, Ms. von Boxberg. You've experienced so much, you've achieved so much, you worked very hard for your achievements. If you look back in a few decades at all the things that you've achieved, what type of legacy or achievement do you want to leave behind?
So in terms of my personal life, it would probably be to have had a fulfilling career and a nice family life. So not just the one or the other, but really both. So that would be from the personal life. In the companies, I mean, it would be nice to leave something behind where they say, hey, it was that direction that we took, or it was that measure that we took that really still makes the company thrive. So in terms of Brussels Airlines, if it was now profitable forever, that would of course be nice if people would say, hey, it was at that time that we took the right decisions and that we made it go that way.
That sounds like a very good goal, and we wish you the best for both in your private life and in your company. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Anton, and I'm asking if you can create a connection, flight connection, to a fictional place from a literature, imagination, or dream, or a movie. Where would it be?
Interesting one. Where would it be? Well, it would still be in the same time, I guess. It wouldn't be in a different time. And where would it go? Interesting one. I can't think of a very cool place that I would go to. I actually like the real world with its real places, I guess.
Hi, my name is Ara Chirumi. I study masters at TUM. I would like to ask you, by the rise of different startups like Flixbus and different train transportation systems, how does Brussels Airlines plans to cope with that and maintain profitability?
Yeah, very cool question. Thank you. So I think we would love to not fly the very short haul destinations and rather be there for the longer haul where it doesn't really make sense to take the bus because it just takes so long. Or at least it doesn't make sense for everybody to take the bus because it takes long. And that's why we also, I'm in discussion, especially with the train operators, a lot to see whether we can get intermodal connections also to Brussels Airport. And I mean, for example, in Frankfurt, I think that really works very nicely with Deutsche Bahn, having also their high-speed train connection at the airport and having that rail and fly product. We tried to do something similar, but in Belgium it's much harder because the Zaventem airport is not at the main train line and the trains don't want to make the detour and so on. And with not Flixbus, but Flipco, another company, we actually do have the first connection from Lille to Brussels, to offer that in a ticket as well. And we think about, can we extend that? Can we have more people coming to the airport by bus? I think it's a super nice way to connect the two products, because flying the very short haul is never very useful for an airline, I have to say.
Hello, my name is Kabir Maheshwari. Thank you very much for your insights today. The airline industry is a very ever-changing, very dynamic industry. So could you maybe share how dynamic the short as well as long-term objectives of Brussels Airlines is or are? Maybe a little bit in context, like even with Air Belgium also having ceased operations, how it would change maybe for Brussels Airlines.
Yeah, so you're definitely right. It's a very dynamic industry, or volatile, if you want to say, because demand can be high, demand can be low, and you need to cope with it. And I think the way to cope with it is to have a good cost structure. I think that really helps to make sure that you are always kind of lean and mean, rather than having too much overhead or having too unproductive aircraft or too unproductive people working. So that's, I think, the best mean you have to work with kind of this operational change. Then are, of course, the big topics like big trends, like do we use AI enough? Are we productive enough by having a good digital check-in process, bag drop service, and these kinds of things. So that's more the big trend things where we just invest in the digital ones. So comparing with Air Belgium had very few aircraft, and they were also long haul. And I don't think it's a good idea to operate long haul services without a feeder network. So if you want to operate long haul, and you're not in Paris maybe or London, so there are few catchments where you can afford to just have the long haul. But in Brussels and other places, you need the feeder as well. And so I think this hub and spoke network, making it very efficient, making the connecting times short and reliable, and having a good scheduling of the flights so that it works well together, I think that is what makes a long-haul operation successful.
Hello, first of all, thank you for being here with us today. My name is Samir Sakran. I'm a student of doing a bachelor's in management and data science. First of all, I wanted to ask you about, right now we live in a world post-pandemic, and that changed a lot of stuff in our world, especially the customer experience or customers' expectations. How did the Brussels airline adapt for the new expectations and demand, especially for digitalization or flexibility and all of the other aspects that changed for the customers and how they look at airlines or their flight as a whole?
Thank you. I think what is interesting is that during the pandemic, a lot of people thought flying wouldn't really come back, so it would be off, and that we really can't see. So the demand has rebounded, not for the corporate travelers though, because a lot more meetings are now held virtually, Teams meetings or other, and you only go to see your customers if you really have a longer meeting, but not for the 1 hour meetings and so on. So the travel patterns, that has definitely changed. I think the search for a seamless travel, and that can of course be helped by digital tools, by reliable travel, enjoyable travel, and so on. I don't think that has changed so much. So maybe this topic of ancillaries, so this question of, do I want to book everything right in the beginning? What do I want to book later? What is also relevant for me to ask for later? So putting more idea generation on these kinds of topics, that has changed and is different. And also the quality of apps and the quality of digital services. But I don't think that the demand has generally changed. So I think we have actually, like any other industry, offering better and better digital services over time. And as customers see digital services in other industries, they expect us to be as good or better than other industries.
Thanks so much for being here. My name is Yandile, and I want to dig deeper more into the category of sustainable flying and e-fuels. Mm-hmm. What strategies do you think should be implemented to make sustainable flying more affordable, especially for end customers, so that our ticket prices won't increase too much?
Yeah, that's a really difficult one, because, I mean, one idea is as the sustainable aviation fuel industries grow and scale up, prices will go down. So that's the expectation as for any other industry. Only that we can't see it yet, and I actually can't also see it in the near, next 5 year or so perspective, because demand will increase, and increasing demand usually leads to higher prices, not lower prices. Yeah. So a possibility would, of course, be state-funded investments, and in the US you have seen it with the IRA. So there is a lot of funding of green technologies. In Europe, we don't really have an equivalent of that, and even though there is money earmarked for these kinds of projects, it doesn't really get to the project. So I think there's still way too few projects, and there is not a large degree of state or government funding. But I think that's the only way to make sure that in the end it doesn't end up with the customer, because the airline has more or less the possibility to go bankrupt or give it to the customer, like if you want to see it in a black and white thing. And if the costs increase, it will also somehow end up with the customer, yeah.
Yes, Ms. von Boxberg, first of all, thank you for your time. My name is Ralf Händle, and my question was, what benefits but also challenges do you see strategy-wise in operating within the Lufthansa Group? As I can imagine, there are maybe some conflicts that can arise from other carriers like Austrian, Swiss, or also Eurowings.
So I think it's actually, so the idea how it works is that the hub airlines, so Eurowings is a little bit separate as a point-to-point carrier, but the hub carriers work together commercially. So for example, we've only got one sales force in the US selling tickets for all carriers flying out of the US. So that's a coordination in a matrix function where you've got people doing network on group level and then their counterparts in the airlines. And of course, like in any organization, you sometimes have this thing that the other one is not right, but you are right, yeah? But generally, the idea is really to grow. And it's a little bit of a healthy competition, because investments go to where you can get the best return. And that, I think, is a good incentive for each of the airlines to bring good returns for the investments they get. So, well, I think it's actually quite a well-running system, and it's not a big fight or so between the functions, yeah?
Hello, I'm Emre. I'm a master's student in management. I would like to ask, as a CEO, are you just trying to help people to bring their ideas and implement it to your company? And secondly, you mentioned that when you hire people, you are just want them to be heard and have the value, but don't you have a bigger long-term targets to get a bigger organization and like hire more people, and at the end people will be a number? So what's your approach to this?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So indeed, the larger an organization gets, the easier it is that you may feel as a number, because there are many other people around. But I really believe in leadership doesn't work by one person or just a small leadership team, but leadership works best if each and everyone has ownership for their topics and moves them forward. And I've seen so many examples where individuals really made a big change because they had a good idea and brought that forward. And so I think if you have this culture that you know that it's not a few that can make the decisions or that make the best decisions, but that ideas and the best ideas can come from many places, and you offer ways to hear these ideas, I think then you can continue that. Yes, it gets a little harder with a larger organization, no doubt, but I think it's more a general attitude question. So for every leader in the organization, do I listen to what my colleagues tell me? Do I think I'm the greatest, or do I think the best ideas come if we work together on topics? Yeah? Do I have a way to break the silos? Because in the end, people report somewhere and they tend to be in that reporting line, and then you always have silos. So it's very hard to avoid the silos. But how do you make people work cross-functionally? How do you make sure they understand the issues you create for the others when you work on something? So having structures where people meet, but also people work in a way that goes across potential silos, I think that's super important. So I think it's a lot to do with mindset and attitude, and then of course of putting in place the kinds of meetings, the kinds of structures, and also the kind of rewards. So celebrating the successes that come from somewhere that make a change. Or for example, like I of course think I'm very approachable, yeah? So why don't people approach me if they've got something? It probably doesn't look like that for everybody in the organization, because from some perspectives I may be somewhere high up and not so approachable, yeah? So how can you, that's again this topic of the small signals, yeah? So if somebody sends you an email, somebody in the organization, do you say, hey, wow, finally somebody sends me an email, and you react to that? Or do you say, oh, somebody's bothering? I mean, usually people don't write emails to praise you, but because they complain about something, yet another complaint. Or do you say, hey, wow, somebody has reached out to me, let's use it and make an interaction from that, yeah? So it has a lot to do with attitude and mindset, I would say.
Hello, my name is Anna. I'm also studying at TUM. First of all, thank you for having a conversation with us. And my question is, if you was on our place, like students who want to build a career in big, large company, what would be your steps? Maybe a strategy, to which company would you apply to? And overall, how would you structure your career?
So where you apply to should really depend on your interest, obviously, yeah? So I think you're best at what you like most. And I think if you want to spend a lot of time on a job, you should also get something out of the job. And that is most likely if you like the topic, if you like the company, if you like to work with the people you have as your colleagues. So, and of course, it's a little bit hard from the outside to judge. So, because the colleagues you don't know upfront, so it has to do something around the topic of the company, the purpose of the company, what are they doing, what are they working on, that helps. And then I think it's worthwhile to evaluate. So is it really the right thing for me? And then the question, can I change something here? Or do I go somewhere else because somewhere else might be more fitting for me, yeah? And having children, or at least one that is also studying at TUM, so being in your generation, I would say, yeah? I think what I've seen in your generation, and that's of course very stereotyped now, is that you're probably trying too short. So already after a few months you say, aha, no, that's not it, yeah? So I think it's worthwhile to stay a bit longer, yeah? Not forever, but staying a year or something to find out is something good or not good, because everything, of course, takes a little bit of time to adjust, to find your ways around and so on. And then also whether it's more an operational career or strategic career or so, I think that also has a lot to do with your interest, yeah? So do you love seeing things happen, or do you love building a concept and thinking about something? Can be very different what is gratifying for oneself, yeah?
Hello, I'm Ahmet Keskin from TUM, Master in Management. What do you think about when AI will replace pilots with full automation, and is it possible?
I think it will be possible, but the question is, it's a question of trust, I think, more than of technology. Yeah, so will people want to go on that aircraft that flies without a human pilot? I think that's even more the question than is it technologically possible. And I think that one pilot cockpit is already in discussion, and the pilot unions, of course, say one pilot is like no pilot, so that's not the way they want to go. So yeah, I think it has a lot to do with, will passengers want to fly on an aircraft without pilots?
Would you?
Not yet, I would say.
Right.
I haven't seen the proof yet.
All right.
So.
Hello, thank you for being here today. My name is Jessica. My question for you would be, in such a traditionally structured industry like aviation, how do you foster creativity and innovation? And maybe a quick follow-up, like if you could implement any idea, what would it be and why?
So I think you're right. In the airline industry, a lot of topics need to follow really strict procedures. So a pilot, you don't want to have very creative pilots. You want pilots that work to the book, yeah? So, and that part of how you work, of course, has a big influence on the rest. But the question is how can, and this ambidexterity, I think, is the word that you use often, yeah? So how can you make that on the one side, where it's needed, people fully follow the processes and make it work and achieve excellence in what they're doing and just make it perfect. Whereas on the other side, you try out things, you fail fast, you iterate, you do these kinds of things. And I think it works in having different structures. So not for the pilots, not for people in ground ops, not for people that work on any safety related topics, and not where you need a lot of efficiency. But if you think about the app, for example, if you think about our digital hangar, if you think about innovation, I think there you need it a lot. And I think it's by having separate groups led by separate people and following different types of incentive schemes and different types of KPIs, I think that's how you can do it. Yeah. What would I like to have? So, yeah, something that really makes you feel at ease. So I don't need to think about anything around my flight. So I don't need to check in. I need to be at the airport. So something tells me go to the airport now because it's now the time if you take the train to be there in time. Maybe something that also tells me don't forget to take in your bag this and that you absolutely need for this destination. So having less brain work on getting to my destination and just being relaxed, I think that's what I would like.
Hi, I'm Raniel Kakulitan. I'm a Master's in Management student at TUM. Thank you for your talk today. You mentioned about a differential treatment between men and women. So as a woman in power, how do you push your organization to reverse this?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent it happens automatically because having gone a different path and probably having a bit of a different leadership style, I value that leadership style and others value something else. And so if you've got a diverse team recruiting and hiring, I think you more or less automatically get there. So the question is, how do you get to hiring managers being diverse? I think that is where it's difficult, yeah? And I think what does help is all kinds of programs that help people develop. So at Lufthansa Group, for example, we have programs for women to go into the leadership roles, so to think about it and get coached and so on to get into that role. We also have it internationally, so how people internationally get to the next step and get into leadership roles. So yeah, I think making leaders aware that there is a topic, offering help to those that you want to get a higher share. I think that is good practices.
And Brussels Airlines has 52% women to men ratio, I believe, and in your board it's 2/3, right?
Yeah,
So
but it's only 3 people
it's
in the
only
board,
3,
so
all right.
yeah, but 2 women and 1 man.
I wanted to make it sound a bit more than it. Anyway. Right.
Yes.
Hello, ma'am. My name is Karthik. I'm currently studying for my master's degree in management from TUM. So you mentioned holding multiple roles within the same group of companies, which likely means facing decisions that are rather contradictory when it comes to outcomes for your company and for synergy. So what do you go for? Like, do you take a decision that favors synergy across the group of companies, or do you go for a decision that creates positive impact for the company that you're most visibly accountable for rather than synergy?
Yeah, that's always a difficult one. Yeah. So the way how we want to go about this is to say we don't look at only the individual decision, because in an individual decision it may be that 2 companies or 3 companies win and 1 loses. So would I then support as the losing one that decision? Yeah. And the idea is to say, well, don't look at only one decision, but look at it for half a year or so and look at all the decisions. And if you add them up, do you have a net benefit? And the synergetic ones should give a net benefit. So, and I think it's not worthwhile to discuss this one decision where I'm a little bit worse off if on the next 4 decisions I'm better off and I really have something out of it, yeah? So, and getting into that attitude to say, hey, the first one I take, the second one I take, and only if it's the third one and I feel it's always me and always in a row that is going the wrong direction, then I need to really do something about it. And otherwise I accept it because I know I also get the benefits. So I think that's a way to tackle it.
Hello, my name is Izal and I'm studying in TUM, Management in Digital Technologies. And my question is, what advice do you have for a woman who just moved to Europe and planning to start her career in here. We are many women in here in this bed, and what are the challenges and opportunities we might face?
Yeah. So one of the opportunities you all face is a very good education, obviously. So I think that's very important as a starting point, and that's what many recruiting companies look for. So do you have the educational background that it takes? Yeah, so I think that's super cool. And then it's, I think, a lot about be curious, try things out, also go out of your comfort zone from time to time, not all the times in terms of be stretched so far that you kind of can't handle it, but try to always go a little step further, because then you learn, I think, the most, and then you also get the most. I think for women in particular, it's a lot about stereotypes, but unfortunately a lot of the stereotypes are true. So a few stereotypes, yeah. There is a job posting, and the woman looks at the 10 criteria for every job posting and would be good at 8 but not at 2. Then I don't apply, I'm not perfect for the job. Stereotypically, the man looks at it, 3 out of them I can do easily, I'm the perfect person for the job. Yeah. So this kind of thing. Or, for example, another very stereotypical thing, you've got a meeting with a round of people. So women tend to not say again what has already been said. Men don't really bother, so everybody has said it, but not me, me say it also. Very stereotypical, sorry. But then if you are the woman, then make sure you say it first, yeah? I mean, you don't have to be the second one saying it, but then step in earlier and don't wait until everything is said and then say, I can't say it. Because if you don't say anything in meetings, people don't see you, people can't read your mind, and then they won't see how brilliant you are. Yeah, so I think it's sometimes these easy things where you need to make sure that you understand how it works and how you can disadvantage yourself if you just are too shy or too taken back or something like that. But that's very general. Sorry for that.
Hi, my name is Payal. I study also Masters in Management at TUM. My question is, some airlines like Ryanair, recently the CEO announced some unconventional ideas like standing seats. Would you say that Brussels Airlines would consider such measures to compete with low-cost carriers?
So we want to be a value carrier. We don't want to be at the lowest price, but we want to give good service to our customer. And at the same time, you're of course always in a competitive environment, and you need to see that it's attractive for your customers. So far, I think we're doing fine by offering hospitality, decent seats, good cabins, good network, and so on. And yeah, so is it unimaginable if everybody goes down that drain that we would do it one day? Well, no, it's not unimaginable, but that's not what I'm seeing in the market. So I see people that, be it for business or for leisure, want to travel comfortably, with friendly people, yeah, with ease at mind and a nice hospital service. But it always depends on how is the customer expectations.
Hi, I am Boiti Bekzuang, and I am studying Master in Information and Engineering. And I have a question, is that you have thought that you have a time that there's a project that don't work well and you need to cancel that. So did it reduce your confidence, and how you gain your confidence back?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it didn't reduce my confidence. I was just upset. Yeah, so more on the angry side than on the unconfident side. Yeah, and I think what I tried to do with it was really this lessons learned. So can we make sure that we as an organization learn from it? I personally, but also the other ones involved. What does it take to be more successful next time? Yeah, and so in that case, it had a lot to do with communication. So do we speak about what works and what doesn't work? Are we trying to always tell, like if you've got traffic lights, like red, yellow, green, everything is green always? Or do we say in time it's red and we really mean it's red and it's a dangerous thing? So it has to do a lot with psychological safety. Yeah? So do people dare to speak up? And that is where, of course, as a leader, you have a very important role. So if people don't dare to tell you, I mean, then you're, of course, in trouble. Yeah. So I would generally say, if things go wrong, it's probably that I'm more disappointed than discouraged, and I would try to make it better next time. Yeah. So okay, that's how it was, but now let's get it done better next time.
Hi, my name is Ruchira. I'm also studying at TUM. My question is, what was the most stressful problem you faced as a CEO? And looking back right now, would you have dealt with it any different, or is there a lesson that you learned from a stressful problem?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we had a very stressful problem at Lufthansa Cargo, actually, which was when the pandemic hit and we didn't get at the Lufthansa Group the state aid yet, and that was really dragging on and dragging on. There was the question whether Lufthansa Group would file for bankruptcy. And then the question was, or the assumption in the group was, that all the group companies would then file for bankruptcy. But for us at Lufthansa Cargo, it went really well. So the question we had, like, could we survive on our own? Should we not file for bankruptcy in such a case? And then also preparing for the case that Lufthansa would file for bankruptcy at that time. So we actually had this money bags gotten from the bank so that the pilots could pay for their fuel at outstations. So there was a lot of preparation ongoing. How would we survive the time between filing for bankruptcy and then getting into these, not Chapter 11, but the German type style of insolvency regulation, yeah? So that was actually a little bit wild. And what can we learn from that? In such a moment, people collaborate perfectly well. It's the one moment where everybody knows what is really most important. And I think for many people, it's also very memorable in the end. So that's the stories you'll tell your grandchildren, yeah, because it was actually cool. And it went out well, yeah. So I mean, it's always nicer when things go out well in the end, of course.
Hello, my name is Rasta Saulida, studying here at TUM. Thank you so much for being here and answering our questions. I would like to know what your response as the Lufthansa Group representative in the European Commission would be on the criticism of Europe's green regulations disproportionately affecting their global trade negotiation power. Thank you.
Yeah, so I can probably answer it best for the aviation industry, yeah. And there the topic is really, can we get to a level playing field with other companies? Because if you think, for example, about the SAF mandate, we will have these 2% and then 6% and then 10% of SAF, which is a lot more expensive than the regular fuel. And if we fly from Europe to Shanghai, then we have to take it for the full way. If you fly with Turkish Airlines, you only have to take it until Istanbul and then not anymore. So that makes a huge cost difference. And that is one of the topics we're discussing with DG Move, so the transportation unit of the Commission, to say how can you make sure that it's level playing field and not super disadvantageous for the European carriers. And of course, one idea would be to have a fee that is from origin to destination, independent of whether you have a stopover or not in the middle. So that is a proposal we make and we discuss with them, and I think it's also heard, but it's definitely not yet implemented. So that's one of the discussions we have. So I think level playing field is the most important. So if it's also applicable to the other companies, I think it's good because it leads into the direction of decarbonization. But if it's in the end only leading to no aviation industry in Europe, but everywhere else, and the carbon effect is still there, and maybe even higher for reasons, yeah, then it doesn't help the case.
Hi, Ms. von Boxberg. Thank you for being here and sharing your experience with us. My name is Yining, and I'm a student from TUM School of Management. And you have mentioned having an interest in multiple industries in your career, in your early career. And my question is, how can one explore more industries and fields, as many as possible, especially as a new graduate in today's job market, where most recruiters will prefer candidates with deep expertise in one specific field? And do you have any advice on balancing these two paths?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the recruiters will also see that you're interested in topics if you do different things. So I wouldn't be too anxious about how the recruiter looks at it. I would more look at it from your perspective. So what is good for you? And so if you're not so decided yet, I think internships are cool, or working on a student job in a company to see to get to know the people, what's the culture, how do they make decisions, how do they treat me when I join that company. So I think internships and this kind of trying out is a good way of finding out more. And I would be astonished if people would say, oh, I can't see the red thread of her career yet, and she's already 23. So I think there's more time to develop and to find a path, I think.
Hi, my name is Senef Bolanik. How do you maintain a balance between your professional responsibilities and personal life, especially in a high-pressure situation?
Mm-hmm. So what I think is always important that you keep this balance. Yeah. So if you exhaust yourself completely at work and then come home and think, now please replenish my resources, dear family or dear friends, that's not fair. Yeah. So you need to find a way that overall you give in energy at work, but you also get back, and the same in your private life, I think. Yeah. So and one, I think, basic for that one is sleep enough. So if you really are sleep deprived, I think it will be very hard to go well, yeah? But so this question is, do I have a job that I really like? Then it's easier than if it's a job I don't like. Do I like the people I work with? Then it's much easier to also gain energy at work than if I hate all of my coworkers, yeah? So find a way that your work life is also giving you energy back. And yes, after a work day, you may be exhausted, but kind of if you slept for the night, then in the morning you're fresh and energetic again, yeah? Because everything else, I think, is hard. You can't expect your family life or friends to always only give energy to you. They will also want to have kind of an equilibrium. And if you're kind of the energy drain for everybody, you're not a nice person to be with, yeah? So avoid the energy drains both in private life and in work life, I think, and find your sources.
What's the perfect sleep duration?
I think that also depends on the person, no? But I think 8 hours is
Right.
like the average for most people, and people that only sleep 6 hours are likely sleep deprived, I think.
Right.
Hi, I'm Pang Rui. I'm currently studying in the Master of Information Engineering. And thank you for coming here today. And you just mentioned the book called The Power of Habits. I'm also believe in the power of habits. So my question is, can you tell us what habits have you developed in your early student life that you find really helpful in your later career? Yeah, thank you.
So which habits are really useful? So curiosity for sure. So this topic of trying new things out, the habit of talking also with people that you don't know, so get to know new people and new views. The habit of reading, because I think it brings you a lot of thoughts that are maybe not in your daily field around. The habit of having a nice social life, so family, friends, and so on. I think that's super important for me. So yeah, and I think also the habit of having something intellectually to work with. So be it analytical, be it a complicated question, something in that sense.
Hi, I'm Valeria Roy, studying at Hochschule Heilbronn. Thank you for your time. And I wanted to ask you, as you said, you're a person interested in multiple different things at the same time. And and that sometimes might be hard to satisfy. How do you feel in your current position? Are you fulfilled with how many different topics does your position cover and so on?
Yeah, I think a CEO position generally is very broad, because in the end you're responsible for the entire company. And yes, you've got all the different functions, but but you want to make sure that you really interact with all functions, not only the ones reporting to you. So I think the CEO role is a good one to satisfy the idea of having many interests, no doubt. And then having that political role on top and the commercial role, so I'm not getting bored, I can assure you. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Yuanying Li. I study management and data science at TUM. You mentioned that after you became the CEO, you still have a lot of communication with your staff. So my question is that imagine there is a scenario where you are dining alone in a canteen and there is an employee in your company approaches you and ask if they can have the meal with you to seek for some advice or ask you some questions. Would you think this employee, he or she is courageous, or would you find it intrusive or inappropriate? Of course, the employee is not a pilot.
Yeah, so I think in real life it doesn't happen. Because again, unless it's somebody you know really well already. So I think what is the more realistic case, I go into the canteen, I don't have a canteen date, and I just check out which table do I go to and sit at. And that I do quite often. Yeah, so, and then I impose myself to other people who never say no. And then I start the discussion. Or we have these kind of happy hours, after like a little bit of a party after work, where I try to not only talk to the people I already know, but also to people that I haven't talked to yet. So I think that's how you can do it. So for example, we've got the management trainees, and they're the one sitting really close to me. He came by and said, hey, couldn't we have lunch? And then we also had lunch. But it happens very rarely. So I think if you're more at the top of the pyramid, you need to reach out more and you need to put more energy into it, because you can't expect people coming, because it's quite a barrier, even though I don't want it to be a barrier. So no, I wouldn't find it presumptuous if somebody came, but it's not so likely that somebody would.
Thank you.
What are the topics you talk about normally? I mean, and what's the small talk style in Belgium versus Germany, perhaps?
Well, the Belgium small talk can always start with weather. The weather is terrible, so. But that's not so different to Germany, I guess. Yeah, and then food, of course. In the canteen, we've got a very nice canteen. The food is usually good, so that's a very easy entry. But usually they are in some kind of topic already, and I try to listen in and continue on that one. Or I know what department they are from and kind of ask a question around their department to start with. So I think, yeah, that somehow is not so difficult.
I assume there has never been someone who said, who are you?
Well, actually, so on the ground staff and in cabin staff, it can happen. So sometimes I go on board, and I think actually our operations center tries to pre-warn them all when the CEO is coming, yeah? But sometimes I go there and say, hey, hello, I'm Dorothea, and they, okay. So
All right.
can happen.
Okay.
The longer you're there, the less it happens, obviously. Yeah.
Hello, Ms. Boxberg. Thank you for sharing your experience with us today. My name is Liu. I'm a master student at TUM. My question is, what do you anticipate will be the next technological breakthrough in the aviation industry, and how do you plan to cope with it? Like sometimes when I stuck in a traffic jam, I always imagine I could have a flying car, something like that. Yeah.
I'd like to have that car on the other level also, or a beamer would also be perfect, yeah, to just get to the other place. So I think it will be more conventional. It will be engines that are highly more efficient, and there are different technologies out. And over time, I hope it will be the hydrogen aircraft, yeah. So. And I think it won't really change the industry that much in the first place, yeah. So I think it would be interesting. So I think the pandemic was kind of the huge experiment. What happens if people don't fly? And I think nobody could have imagined that there was no flying across the transatlantic for months. And we probably would have thought it doesn't work, but yes, it does work somehow. So I think some of the big experiments have been made. But if it's possible, again, people want to meet again and see different places.
Hello, my name is Farida, and I'm a Master in Management student at TUM. It's an honor to have you here today with us. My question is related to cultural impact. Which aspects of Belgian culture do you want passengers to experience mostly with Belgian Brussels Airlines?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think part of it is this hospitality and speaking all the languages, which I think is very Belgium. But then it's of course also about the food. So it's different food partners that we have. It's Tomorrowland as a big partner that we have, of course, bringing the best of Belgium to the world. We also have a few aircraft that are in special liveries, like a Tomorrowland aircraft, but also one of the Red Devils and Red Flames, so the national football teams. Or we've got a Tintin, Tim und Struppi aircraft. So, and now we are also getting one with the atomium on it. So we try to bring it, with some of our liveries, but then really with the hospitality and the way, we interact with people.
Since you mentioned food a few times, sorry for keeping it, but what are some of the typical Belgian dishes that you can recommend?
Well, of course, beers and French fries. I mean, very many different kinds of beers and very good French fries or waffles. But that's, of course, very at the surface of it, yeah? And then there are really lots of nice dishes. So, for example, in the canteen, we have also pheasant, boar, so all kinds of things that you would never get in a German canteen. Okay. I think the mussels and fries are, of course, an all-time favorite. So, yeah, there are a few things to explore.
Hello, thank you for your inspiring stories and sharing with us today. My name is Angi. I'm from TUM Master in Management. My question is, in a team settings or meetings where there are certain individuals that are dominating the conversation and risk our voice to be overlooked, how do you ensure that your ideas are being heard and respected without creating conflict, especially if you are new to the team or like just enter the job? Thank you.
It's a similar question to what can you do and what can the leader do. I think in that case, it's also the leader who's got a lot of the responsibility. And I think there are all kinds of moderation techniques. So we brainstorm and each one writes something down and each one tells what they've written down so that nobody can dominate, for example. Yeah, if you're in an idea creation, or you can, if somebody always talks and somebody doesn't, you can ask somebody, and what's your opinion and what would you say, yeah? So, but it's very hard if you are the newbie that is the overlooked one to fully step up, because so you need the environment where people want to have you speak up, yeah? And of course you can do what you can say, hey, by the way, I also have an opinion to it, wouldn't you like to hear mine as well or so? But it's always a fine line before people find it strange or intrusive or so. So maybe the best way in such a situation would be to let the meeting pass, to talk with the leader afterwards and say, hey, by the way, I think I could also contribute and I would like to contribute, but I didn't feel the right way to get there. Could you not help me contribute more to the team? I think that's how I would do it. I would not be very confrontational in the meeting, but I would try to, after the meeting, make sure that for the next meeting it works better.
Hello, my name is Yifan Liu. Maybe my question sounds a little cliche, but I still want to ask it. In the beginning of your speech, you mentioned your experience at ESCP at Paris, which I'm so interested. As an international student in a foreign country, just like me, so not have a good command of local language. So how have you ever felt frustrated, devastated, or in a state of agitation, or how would you just get yourself out of the confusion?
Yeah. So learning the language obviously very much helps. Yeah. So I was trying very hard to learn the language to be part of all conversations and not just a professor reading to you that also has something on the slide so you can kind of copy paste, but up to the level where you're at a bar, there's side music, it's the people talking next to you, so can I still hear what they're saying? Yeah. So language, of course, helps. And then it goes back to similar things. So if it's a work relation, well, it should be clear that we then speak English and have a common language to make sure that we can benefit from everyone. That's actually one of the topics we have in the Lufthansa Group, yeah, because Lufthansa, Austrian, Swiss all speak German, and only the Belgians don't all, and even a lot of the Belgians speak German, yeah. So then, kind of the expectation is everybody speaks German. That's not the case. Can you speak English, please? And sometimes it's like, oh, now we need to speak English for that one person. But it gets more and more into the habits. And yeah, I think many organizations want it to be normal that you can just do it in English, but it's always a journey. I mean, if somebody has worked in a company for 20 years, always speaking German, and suddenly that person is supposed in the same meeting to speak English, it's like, why? Yeah. So it's a change process where you need to take also the ones along that were used to something else. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Claudia Daci, I'm a master student at TUM. Thank you for being here. My question is, you are the CEO of a passenger airline in one of the biggest airline group in the world. On the other side, you are also part of the supervisory board of Continental, a company in the auto industry. Could you help us understand why you selected this role and how different the two roles are? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So a supervisory board is very different because, and I only realized once I was on the supervisory board, because you get kind of documents for the individual meetings. And then, of course, sometimes the supervisory board meeting is at one of the sites. You meet some of the people developing a certain product or so, but you are much further away. And that's why I think it's also much more difficult to judge whether things are going well or not well. Yeah, so if you are in a company every day, you meet the people, you hear the gossip, you connect with the people, it's a lot easier than coming in every 3 months to a 1 day or 2 day meeting and then see what they tell you and then have a few questions and answers and then know whether it's going well or not. So I think it takes a lot longer to really be knowledgeable and have a good feeling of what's going on. So just because you've got so much less interaction, even if you try, even if you read all the documents and you really want to understand. And but then the role is of course also a different one. So the operational management is with the Vorstand, with the executive board, and you're only looking whether they kind of derail or something, or you help on some of the strategic discussions, but you're not in charge operationally. So it's also such a different role. And the role is really more a risk-minded role. So could something go wrong is more the mindset in a supervisory board than, hey, great, you've done well. Yeah, so it's really different from the operational role where you would also want your people to be motivated and happy and you would be more on the positive side, whereas, like also again, stereotypically, in a supervisory board, it's more, is something going wrong? Could something go wrong? And have I scrutinized everything enough? And I think seeing the two sides is super interesting. I mean, my board is an internal Lufthansa Group board, so I don't have the same setting, but it helps to see how do supervisory board members look at a board? How do they look at how they interact? How do they look at results? How do they look at explanations? How do they look at presentations? So I think that's, again, good for you to internalize when you're in the other role. And having an operational role, you also have a kind of idea of what do they mean by showing you these figures or giving you that explanation. So I think it's a good, it works together in very different roles.
How did you receive that role at Continental?
Well, that was actually a headhunter reaching out to me, and I found it interesting.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Oh, hello, my name is Ziyue Wang, and I come from TUM. Many women feel the pressure to wear makeup in the workplace to maintain a good image. Well, in my observation, this expectation for wearing makeup is not on the men. So what's your perspective on this? And do you think society tends to place more emphasis on women's appearance? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think women are still looked at differently than men. I think, no doubt. Yeah, so this question of what does she wear, then this question of is she too loud or too quiet? Is she so many, or like if men make a strict decision, it's good. If women make it, she is like a man or she's too harsh or so. So I think it's more of a fine balance to find your way, that people don't think either, well, she can't do it because she's too soft or she's too hard. So it's very easy that as a woman you are too much of something either way. And yeah, I think it's again with interacting with people and yeah, gaining trust or earning trust over time by people seeing, aha, she does take good decision, or we do take good decisions together, that you earn the trust. Yeah, and yeah, there's no recipe, I think, but I would agree that women are have more chances to get it wrong, I would say.
And hello, Mrs. von Boxberg. Thank you very much for your time here today. I'm Karina. I'm a master student at TUM. My question for you today is, if you can take part in designing aircrafts, what are the facilities you'd like to add to make long-distance flights less boring? Thank you.
Well, it would be really nice to have like a more immersive cinema experience, so that you really feel like you're in a different place, maybe with 3D types of goggles and films. So I mean, many people in long-haul flights fly in economy class and don't have much space. And if somehow you could feel that you have a lot of space because you're somewhere in the different world, I think that would be a very nice one, yeah? And it's also entertaining, and it's also, probably, less boring than it may otherwise be, I guess.
Hello, my name is Nathan. I'm studying Master at TUM. So my question would be, I visited at some point Amsterdam to New Year with some friends. We were like 5 of us, and we all came too late to the flight back to Germany. But we were really lucky. Somebody actually booked the next flight for us for free. So my question would be, are there like some top-down regulations that are instructing their employees how they should behave in this case, or was the employee that friendly to us and helped us just? Thank you.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of, so that's in this ambidexterity in the area of get the process right, get it always right, and perform it to excellence. So for sure there have been rules, and maybe the rule was that your fare ticket or whatever said you can rebook, or it was really an exceptionally nice person who did it for you. I don't know.
Hello, I am Vivek Kumar from Management and Data Science Bachelor's. So my question is, since the carbon pricing, they are increasing the financial pressure on aviation airline in Europe. So how will you manage with the carbon pricing? So would you just increase the ticket prices and then switch to the sustainable fuels?
So I think what airlines really do all the time is think about how can we become more productive. We take out costs, take out waste, and so on. And there's a constant pressure on prices, production prices of airlines, so always. So that's why that path of having enough motivation to reduce cost, I think that is high. But if then your 30% cost element of fuel suddenly becomes twice the price, there's no other way than increasing prices. Otherwise, you would just go bankrupt. Yeah? So the different sustainability measures that are there to take the carbon out of the air will also increase fares. I don't see any other way for that.
Thank you.
I'm Gentiana Gashi, and I'm studying entrepreneurship at HHN. My question would be, what moment in your career has influenced you the most, and how do you apply that experience in your role as a CEO?
I don't think there has been this one moment only. So I think I've learned from every one of my bosses, and they've been quite different. So I think this looking always what can you learn from that person. So for example, one topic that I found really cool was when I was in this customer experience job, and the board was always interested in what's coming next, and they were giving us lots of tasks and look into this, look into that, look into that. And what my boss came up with was to say, okay, no, we produce the ideas, we have more ideas than them, and we will make them work rather than the other way around. So we come up with lots of ideas, and they will say, stay away, rather than come again with the next idea. Yeah, and that was such a cool one, because then you drive the agenda, and you're not just driven by somebody. So that was one of the things that I really liked, and that I really like to keep also for my business life. But I think there have been many things over time. Yeah.
My name is Chutikan Sisuwan, and
Master in Management student at TUM. So my question is regarding their personalized experience. How does Brussels would utilize their data and data collection and the usage to serve its customer better?
So how can we serve our customers? I didn't fully get it, I think. How do we serve our customers better too?
I mean, by using their data, like utilize the data usage.
Ah, okay, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, so data is super important. Yeah, and we have a lot of data, but not all data is always accessible. So sometimes you would like to work with data, but it's somewhere in a system and you can't really get it out. But in the end, the more data you have, the better you can analyze what is really happening. So for example, if you talk about the ancillaries, yeah, who is buying them, which distribution channel is the best, at what time before the flight is the best moment to do it. So how can I offer a personalized experience by using the data that is already created somewhere? I think that's super important. Yeah? On the commercial functions, it's all about predicting the demand in 9 months' time on a route on a Thursday afternoon. Yeah, so it's all about predictive models telling you there will be a lot of demand or not, and that's why already now the prices should be higher or lower. Yeah, so I think data is used everywhere, but we need and we do improve over time to find it and to also get into the topics that we haven't really looked in as much yet. Yeah, so. Yeah, and AI will of course help to treat all the lots of data and systems to make sure you can get the most out of it.
Well, thank you for answering all of our questions and for your wonderful visit.